Greetings, I'm Mr. O'Neill and I teach English Language Arts online in Washington State for Stride K12. And let's get going with the K12 Esports League Spring 2026 Chess Tournament Arena, which has just started. Today is May 13th, 2026. I rickrolled you 2133 and Octavian player 2107. Let's rewind the tape back to the beginning. C4, F5. Knights activated, bishops activated, some sort of English opening, Anglo-Dutch defense according to the computer. And the knight possibly has a bright future here, but not immediately because the pawn is restricting development to e5. But this is a pretty typical King's Indian setup for white. Pushing. Although pushing clamps down this pawn and then you're restricting your development here and possibly here if they push. Interesting. So the point is if you take, you'll have an isolated pawn. So you have to probably take with the queen instead. So take with the knight, take, bishop's going to have an attack on b2 in the very end. So the rook would have to slide over. You can't develop your pawn to b3 because then you're losing your rook to the bishop. So the rook would just have to slide over to b1 to defend the pawn. That doesn't look horrible. But black probably wants to get this knight outpost on b4. So the knight comes to b4. I rickrolled you spent quite some time thinking about that. Both of these players are extremely strong, over 2100. The point of h6 is also kind of the point of h3, which was played by white. Kind of a copycat idea from both sides, a3 or h3 and h6. The point is that you want to restrict development to g5 for the bishop, because you don't want the bishop pressuring that knight. Same for white. White does not want the knight to hop in here to g4. So this almost provokes c5. And this might actually be a small inaccuracy. Yeah, so calculate it. Take. The knight cannot take, because then you're losing your knight to this knight. And then the bishop's also covering. And white is doing a nice job defending this knight twice with the bishop and the queen. So there's not even a discovery on this diagonal. Octavian player is doing a really nice job making sure all their pieces are defended. But I rickrolled you still putting up a good fight. Probably could have gone c5 to kick the knight away. This is going to be a tough outpost because the knight's defending and the bishop's defending. But maybe I rickrolled you looking to open up this file. Because if the knight develops to e4, this is going to be a tough outpost. Because there's takes, the knight can take or the pawn takes. If the knight takes, then bishop takes, pawn takes. This pawn's a little bit misplaced on e4 because it's not going to be supported by another pawn. It'll be doubled up with the other e-pawn, but then you're opening up this file for your rook, which there's no way to take immediate advantage of because this rook's defending, the king's defending, and this bishop's defending from behind. So f2 is very well protected for white. Okay, so we see an exchange of knights. Probably want to take with queen to not damage the pawn structure, although you could take toward the center and open up the a file for your rook. Bring the rook back over to a1. Okay, so we see the queen takes, going after the undefended b7 pawn. Ooh, that pawn's undefended. Now, the question is, can you take that little bugger? Can you take that little tasty morsel right there? b7. Because the point is if you take it, the rook's going to come over and the queen is just about trapped. The queen on b7 would have to move to a6. So that's probably what they're calculating. The queen is just about trapped if you take on b7. Trying to expand on the king side, it looks like. Now, there's a very old rule in chess. Never play f4 if you're white. If you're black, never play f5. And both players have played it. Because the point is that when you play f4, or if you're black and you play f5, the point is that this diagonal is getting opened up against your king. For white, this is the diagonal that's getting opened up against the king, since this pawn has been developed. So since both of these pawns are developed on the f-file, you see these diagonals opening up against the king. The knight wants to add an extra attacker on f4. And then it was also attacking the undefended g3 pawn. So Octavian player had to go king to h2 to defend that pawn. The problem for I rook rolled you is if they push, then there's simply h4 to close down the position, and then the king is completely safe. So the only real chance that I rook rolled you has to open up the king side to get some sort of attack is to take on f4. So if you look at this position, the point of queen to g6 is you're getting another piece on the king side. And after takes, you kind of have to take with pawn. It looks scary. But then you have this queen with some nice vision on this bishop. This is a tricky position for both players. Now, if you take on b7, you've got an attack against the bishop. And the bishop is running out of squares. So takes, bishop is attacked, bishop has to move because the bishop is being attacked. Can't go there because of the pawn, pawn's covering that, pawn's covering that. These white pawns are taking up a lot of space, really restricting that bishop. So no, if the bishop goes back to either of these squares, then you're losing your rook. This is basically a fork. So basically the only move to save the position is rook to d8. It's not looking good because the pawn on a5 is being undefended. And when that pawn on a5 goes down, then white has a passed pawn on the a-file, which is going to be really hard to stop. The key for I rook rolled you is to get this pawn moved so that this bishop can get a discovered attack here. But even then, it's going to be tough. This knight wants to come in the game, and this knight's going to also help support this pawn. Yeah, both players are getting low on time, so that's a sacrifice. Have to take with the king, otherwise you're in big trouble. Now then you're going to have a discovered attack against the king, so this is getting tricky now. Takes, take with check. You can take this way, but the king's getting exposed and it's starting to look a little scary. King has to move there and check, or you can block with the bishop. So there's knight to f4 check, but I don't think it does anything. I mean, that's the best try, just to keep the game going. Knight to f4 check, take, or there's that. So the light squared bishop's activated. So then you take with check, but then the king's escaping to f1. And then you're losing a queen because the rook is on the same file as the king and the queen. So then you're losing your queen. And I rook rolled you's in big trouble. So that's a poison pawn. Can't actually take it. Oh, they did take it. Let's see what their plan was. Oh, and then you take with check. That's tricky. So then you're not losing your queen yet. So yeah, could not go king to f1 because then they're taking with check. So now, yeah, then now you have to block the queen from getting captured somehow. So that's the only move. Tricky position, really tricky. That's basically the only move, knight to g3, so that your queen doesn't get captured, because the queen's pinned against the king. Both players getting low on time. Octavian players trying to defend. Take with the bishop. Takes. Okay, there's that. And the queen's going to take out, imagine. Nice. I rook-rolled you, I think, has a winning position here. This attack is huge. So there's knight to f1 check. There's also queen there check. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I don't think I rook-rolled you has any checks immediately. And they're getting really low on time. Remember, this is 10 plus 0. There is no increment to save I rook-rolled you. So you take with check, if you can. I rook-rolled you really wants to do this, take with check. So then they might capture the knight first. Okay, looks like I rook-rolled you is going to be the one with the time advantage now. Okay, so take with check. That rook to e1 does not make much sense to me. Crazy stuff. It's just a time scramble. Yeah. Yeah, that was crazy. So let's review that game. What a crazy game. So I rook-rolled you was actually really accurate and had a winning position at the end. It was a pretty calm start to the game. Taking up space in the center. Castles, castles. That was a good move from Octavian player. Takes, takes. Yeah, the engine is saying don't take that pawn on b7. So yeah, f4 was an inaccuracy. I had a feeling f4 might be an inaccuracy. Nice move. That's an inaccuracy. See, I thought the Octavian player had some chances here. Because after here, then... Oh, apparently you can sacrifice this. And apparently that's a brilliant move. Because after takes, 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 that's mate in 2. Your king's just really exposed. Yeah, and then even this position is +4 or -4 in favor of I rook-rolled you. So, but I was thinking White would have some chances. Oh, I guess because the rooks have a double defense on a8. And White's not so quick to have their own strong defense of the a file. So the promotion's more difficult to take advantage of. I see. So the engine says king here, queen takes, and it's not going to be so simple for White to get that a pawn across the finish line for promotion. Yeah, so you can't take that knight because that's a poisoned knight. So I rook-rolled you did play a brilliant move in the game. So kudos to I rook-rolled you for finding a brilliant move. And actually going back, look at that, the knight going back to h5 was also a very good idea. The only winning one exclamation point is the only winning continuation. So I rook-rolled you found the only winning continuation. Takes, check. Now I was thinking after the check just go back like this, but then you're running into some problems with check. So you're going to have to sacrifice back. So king to g2 to avoid the other check. Yeah, I was thinking queen takes. But the engine says pawn takes is perfectly fine. Because the point is after pawn takes, let's say the king tries to go to safety, then these pawns are just going to keep marching down the board. And white's just getting completely squeezed out of their own position here. So, check. So this is a royal pin normally, but I rook rolled you is going to block the normal. I rook rolled you is going to block the royal pin with knight to g3, which is the only winning continuation. Again, it's amazing how good I rook rolled you is at finding these moves. And then takes, takes, takes. Check. Aligning the queen on the same file as the king. Smart. That's a good move. Yeah, I was thinking take with check. And there was still 22 seconds left on the clock. This is what I was thinking was going to happen. But that's not what happened in the game. Because now you're up by 4 points. And white's in check. And you can't retake the knight. That's what I was thinking was going to happen. But instead, I rook rolled you tries to do a rook lift. Okay. So putting the rook on the same file as the king. Check. At this point, it's just a time scramble because they're so low on time. Check. That's checkmate. Next move, because you block the check this way and then checkmate. So, nice win for I rook rolled you. Octavian player had to resign there because that was going to be mate in 1. Let's take a look at some of the other games in the tournament. We still have 33 minutes left in the tournament. Dream Angels 88 is doing pretty well. They've won 3 games out of 4, and we've seen them before. And let's take a look at their game. Queen's opening. Dutch defense. Queen's knight variation, according to the computer. Yeah, you'd probably want to put your knight on f3 to really clamp down on this e5 square. Because eventually, black really wants to play e5. So there's going to be a fight for e5. That's unusual, opening up your king side like that. So the pawn's a little bit misplaced on d5. And Trickador the Limber Jedi is winning by 2 points. By 2 pawns. Ooh. Double attack on d6. Takes. That was undefended. Takes. Craziness. What is happening? Takes. More craziness. What is happening? More. What is happening? Lots of checks. White has mate in 1 if they can stop getting checked. This is intense. Super intense. Take the rook, which they do. Takes. Check. It's mate in 2. So check and then check. So that they can... Don't want to block the check with the bishop because this bishop's covering from behind. This has been quite the king run. So white actually has mate in 2. Yikes. That was the only move. I guess they could have gone king to e2, but then you have to take the queen. with the rook or the bishop. Only move. Okay. Develop the knight. Get the other rook in the game. Dream Angels 88 is winning by 4 points here, which is the equivalent of a minor piece and a pawn. There is a passed pawn here. So if Trocador the Lemur Jedi can get this rook to d8 and push this pawn, this rook is defending d1. It's not looking good. Dream Angels 88 is going to go after the undefended bishop. Not bad. Could probably take the pawn on a7. Trocador the Lemur Jedi definitely has some chances here. Probably rook to c6 to go after the knight. The knight has to move, and then the pawn's not being defended anymore. Yeah, or go after the bishop. So rook to c6. That works too. That's a pin. So Trocador the Lemur Jedi have put themselves into a pin. So king to g7 maybe. And maybe the rook can come over with a check. Dream Angels 88 really wants that queen. And then rook to a1. Defend the pawn. I'm not streaming, but I am recording. Okay, so rook to b1. Knight's not being defended. There you go. And the nice thing about putting the knight on e2 is it also defends this d4 square. So it's going to be a little bit tricky to push this passed pawn immediately for Trocador the Lemur Jedi. Wait. Did Dream Angels 88 just lose a rook? Yes, they did. Oh, that rook was not being defended. Yep. Bishops can move diagonally. So Trocador the Lemur Jedi might win this game. Crazy. Wow, what a comeback. What a comeback for Trocador the Lemur Jedi. Was losing for most of that game. Look at this. Dream Angels 88 was winning this game by +4. Wow, what a game. What a comeback. Congratulations to Trocador the Lemur Jedi. Dream Angels 88 is rated 1416, so they are no slouch. No slouch at 1416. So good job, Dream Angels 88, for getting your rating up so high. Okay, so if we take a look at the updated standings, Trocador the Lemur Jedi is still in first. I Rook Rolled You is also in first, or getting close. I Rook Rolled You is about to catch Trocador the Lemur Jedi, only 2 points behind now. And let's see what's happening with Dr. Evenman 12. We have not seen any of their games yet today. Okay, so we have Dr. Evenman 12 against Squeeze the Liz 0. Kings opening from both players. Knights, 4 knights actually. Wow. Haven't had a good 4 knights game in a while. And takes the Scotch variation accepted. And pretty normal stuff. White has a small advantage here. Queen's going to go back. I probably want to start with check first. And I think the engine was thinking about that as well. Start with check, bishop to b5. And after the exchange of bishops, then the queens might... So check. Check. Bishop's got a block. Take. So the queen is a little bit more active on d7 than it was on d8. So maybe that's why the engine doesn't like it. But the engine did think about it for a second. Queen's going to go back. Castle. Now that we have opposite side castles, it's a race to see who can attack the other king first with a pawn storm, usually. So takes, that's a good move. And you can't really take back, because if you take back, then we're going into the endgame. So for example, takes, 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 takes. This is just +2 for white. I mean, they're only +1 in material, but positionally it's +2. Because this light squared bishop's going to develop somewhere, and then this other rook's going to double up the other rook on the d file. And white's going to completely control the d file. And it's going to be really hard for black to make progress. So this is a really nice position for white. So they did not go into that for that reason. And that's a little bit of an awkward move. Takes, takes. Yeah, I want to develop the bishop. Get the queen off of the open file, because that rook is coming in. Ooh, yeah, that was a blunder because of check, which they did not see. Yeah, and white and black's not doing so bad after that check, apparently, which they missed. They still have f4 check. Still have f4 check. Have they not seen it? Man. They still have... Oh, no, they don't have f4 check anymore because the queen's defending f4 now. Good move. Takes, takes. Yeah, this is a decent position for black because of c4. You have to take, 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 take. Knight's not being defended. And there's a lot of pressure on white now. So this is a 50-50 position. But they did not go into it. Instead, we had takes, takes on the a file. Takes, 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 check. This is a crazy move that the engine is recommending. Takes. And then takes. And then... What's the point? You just sacrificed a rook. I don't get that at all. Yeah, the queen can take, which they did. I wonder if this is a mouse slip. I wonder if it was supposed to be this type of check. Because then takes, 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 takes. I think Dr. Ravenman 12 misplayed this. It was a mouse slip. I think they meant to go like this. So this is a check, and something has to be done about the check. So pawn takes, but then there's a double attack on the queen, so you're winning a rook in the end because of the battery on the d file. So instead, what happened in the game was this. Queen takes. And very key here, the knight is covering this rook, so you can't actually take the rook. And now squeeze the Liz 0 is going to win this game, it looks like. See, there's back rank problems for Squeeze the Liz Zero. Squeeze the Liz Zero has some serious back rank problems. Because the point is that takes, you cannot actually take the queen. That's a poisoned queen. Because that's checkmate in 1. Well, not checkmate in 1. You're going to block with the queen, but then you're losing your queen, and that's checkmate. So, cannot take the rook. Oh, they did take the rook. I meant to say, can't take the queen. Check. Take. And Dr. Evenman 12 has found a way to get right back in this game. Yeah, that was a crazy resource. So takes. The only winning continuation here is takes. And then you want to take the queen back, right? And then you're going to take back. And then now Squeeze the Liz Zero still has a winning position by 2 points in material. A rook against a rook and a knight. So this was the winning continuation. Because the point, since you have back rank problems, you want to get this rook off of d1. And the only way to get this rook off of d1 is to sacrifice your queen. And then after you sacrifice your queen, you're going to take the queen back with your own knight. So it ends up being a wash. But that's not what happens in the game. What happens in the game is they try to make some loot for themselves with the king to give the king an escape square. But takes. 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 Oh, I guess there's this too. Takes. 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 But then you're really losing now. Mate in 5. Wow, what a crazy game. What a crazy way for Doctoral Evenman 12 to have a winning position, then have a losing position, then regain a winning position at the very end. And that is why Dr. Evenman 12 is rated over 2,000. And they won on time. Nice job, Dr. Evenman 12. Squiz the Lazero is at 1885 in Rapid, which is very, very high. So they're at 1885 for a reason. Much higher than me. Congratulations to Squeeze the Liz Zero for getting their rating so high. And we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so Squeeze the Liz Zero is retaken first place. I Rickrolled You, still in second. Tricador the Limber Jedi has been knocked down a notch or two. I think at one point Tricador the Limber Jedi was in first. So that was kind of cool. And let's take a look at the next game. Halfling 4. Chess.com Elo 1189 against INGDA Vincent JK 2011. Chess.com Elo rating of 814. And Black Diamond, I have not seen that before. Just showing their flair. Scandinavian Defense. Wow, we haven't seen one of those yet. That's cool. I play the Scandinavian all the time. Takes. And activating the knight, going after the queen. That's a free queen. That's game. That's a free knight. Now, Halfling 4 is winning by 14 points. They do get a minor piece back, but can probably just take the knight. We're caught up to real time now. Yeah, takes. takes, and then take with check, and then take the bishop, which they do. And now check. Could attack the rook this way. Castling is also a great move. Or I don't know if it's a great move, but it's a good move. Because now you're threatening queen to d3 check, which they do play in the game. And that's checkmate. Nice game from Halfling 4. Congratulations. Nice. Squeeze has just been on fire. 9 straight games that they have won. So let's take a look at some of their games. Ooh, Squeeze de la Zero has matched up against I Rook Rolled You. This is going to be epic. Here we go. King's opening. Caro Kann defense. Takes, exchange variation. Knight's going to develop. Defend the pawn. Bishop develops. We have a King's Indian style from I Rook Rolled You. And Knight's going to hop into e5. Takes. Squeeze the Lazero, activating the queen. That's a nice little active square for the queen. Probably not scared of knight to e4 because this knight is covering a4 anyway. Castles. Castle queenside, getting spicy. The first player to successfully make a pawn storm against the opposite castled king is going to win the game, usually. So, opposite castled kings make things even more spicy. Move the bishop back. Yeah, I Rook Rolled You's like, we got to start marching these pawns down the board. I Rook Rolled You's like, let's do this. March all the pawns down the board. King has to defend the pawn because that's a double attack on the pawn with the battery on the dark diagonal. Yeah, take the knight. Because see, the problem is, you're probably thinking to yourself, why did they move their queen on move 20 when they probably just could have pushed these pawns? Well, the problem is if you push this way, then you're going to have this. And then this position's closed down and your attack is gone. And then if you push this way, then they're going to push this way. And now this attack is gone because the position is closed down again. So this is really tricky to try to get this king opened up and exposed. I Rook Rolled You is going to be able to just close down the position, whichever pawn they push on the G file or the H file. So that's why they went queen to G2. It also keeps an eye on that knight. X-ray vision, keeping an eye on the knight. That's a pin. So this pawn is pinned against the queen, and this queen is not being defended. So cannot move this pawn. Cannot move this pawn. Otherwise, you're losing your undefended queen. I Rook Rolled You is going to just keep marching these pawns down the board. Takes. Knight attacks the queen. Queen has to go back. King to b1. Double attack on b2, but the queen's also defending b2. So probably want to start to triple up. Again, I'm sure we're going to see g5, which we do. Close down the position. Triple up. Okay, I Rook Rolled You does triple up. So 1, 2. Oh. Yeah, good move from Squeeze the Lazero to add that extra defender. Again, there's 2 attackers and 2 defenders. So a Rook Rolled You really wants to get this other rook on the B file, most likely. That's what I would do. Get the other rook on the B file. Triple up. The queen's going to go back. So white's going to defend 3 times, but still putting a lot of pressure in the position. White's going to be stuck defending b2 for the rest of the game. Queen to f1, potentially. And that pawn is also not being defended, so that's a fork. Forking this undefended pawn and the king with this check. And then that's another fork, forking the bishop and this pawn. Wow, forks all over the place. Yeah, so they had to move the rook there to try to stop that. I think I rook rolled you has to... Oh, no, they're not going to exchange. They're going to avoid the trade. Game aborted because the tournament ended. What an intense game. Let's take a look at our final standings, shall we? In first place, we have Squiz the Liz0. Second place, we have Halfling4, had some really good games. And I rook rolled you finished in third place. I rook rolled you normally finishes these arenas in first place. So the fact that they finished in third, I mean, even second would be a surprise, but third is even more of a surprise. So congratulations to Halfling4 and Squiz the Liz0 for winning first and second. I would also mention, though, even though I rook rolled you finished third, they are still the highest rated player in the tournament. Just by chess.com rapid elo, I rook rolled you still has that crown of being the highest rated player in the tournament. And this was an unrated tournament. Nobody gained or lost rating points in this arena. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of the Spring 2026 Chess Tournament Arena, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.